No tanks crossed the border. No jets appeared on the horizon. No official declaration was ever made. And yet, within weeks, an entire country began to suffocate. Its currency weakened, imports slowed, payments stalled, not because of bombs or soldiers, but because money stopped moving the way it used to. This is the moment modern power stopped announcing itself and started operating quietly. For most of history, power was loud. Empires expanded through armies. Borders shifted after battles. Victory was visible. You could point to it on a map, but the world that emerged after World War II slowly rewired how dominance worked. The new battlefield was not land, it was access. Access to markets, access to credit, access to the system that decides whether money flows or freezes. The US dollar did not become powerful overnight. It became powerful because the global system was rebuilt around it. Trade, energy, debt, reserves, insurance, clearing, settlement, all of it quietly assumed one thing. The dollar was the neutral center, not American, not political, just practical. At least, that was the story everyone agreed to tell themselves. But neutrality is a fragile illusion. When a country uses the dollar, it is not just using a currency. It is stepping into a legal and financial architecture governed elsewhere. Dollar transactions pass through correspondent banks. Those banks answer to regulators. Regulators answer to laws, and those laws can change without a single vote being cast in the affected country. This is where war stopped looking like war. No missiles are required to create pressure. You only need delay. One bank pauses a transfer for compliance review. Another waits for clarification. A third decides silence is safer than action. Soon, nothing is technically forbidden, but nothing moves. In a system built on velocity, hesitation is fatal. This is why modern sanctions rarely look like punishment. They look like caution. No one tells banks what to do explicitly. They are simply reminded of the risk. And risk, inside financial systems, spreads faster than orders. The safest decision becomes inaction, and inaction, when multiplied across institutions, becomes collapse. What makes this form of power so effective is that it feels invisible. There is no single moment to point to. No headline that says, "The war began today." Instead, there is a slow accumulation of friction. Payments take longer, insurance premiums rise, shipping costs quietly increase, companies stop returning emails, credit lines expire and are not renewed. The system does not attack, it waits, and waiting is devastating. Because governments can rally people against bombs, they cannot rally them against forms and delays and compliance reviews. You cannot hold a press conference against a missing wire transfer. You cannot mobilize an army against a risk department that simply chose not to reply. This is how the dollar replaced war. Not as a weapon you can see, but as an environment you cannot escape. Even countries that publicly oppose the system often remain trapped inside it. Their reserves are denominated in dollars. Their commodities are priced in dollars. Their debts are owed in dollars. Leaving is not rebellion, it is isolation. And isolation is expensive. What looks like financial order is, in practice, leverage. The ability to grant access or deny it without force. The ability to apply pressure without responsibility. Because no one fired a shot, no one appears guilty. The system simply functioned as designed. This is the most unsettling part. There is no villain standing at a podium, no declaration to protest, only a realization, usually too late, that the battlefield was never physical, it was procedural. And once you understand that, the old idea of war starts to feel outdated, because the most effective conflicts no longer destroy cities. They slow systems, they exhaust economies, they force decisions without ever demanding surrender. This is not the end of war, it is what came after. The most dangerous part of this system is not its power, it is its deniability. Because when pressure is applied through money, no one has to admit they are applying it. There is always another explanation. A regulation, policy update, a compliance concern, a risk assessment. Every decision is defensible in isolation. Together they become decisive. This is why financial power rarely feels aggressive. It feels administrative. It arrives in the form of documents, not threats. Deadlines, not ultimatums. The language is clean, technical, apolitical. And that is precisely why it works. Because resistance requires something visible to resist against. And here, there is nothing to point at. When the dollar-based system tightens, countries do not collapse all at once. They erode, slowly, predictably. Foreign investors step back first, not because they are told to leave, but because uncertainty makes return calculations unattractive. Insurance companies follow. Shipping firms adjust routes. Prices rise before shortages appear. By the time people feel it in daily life, the decision-making has already moved elsewhere. And that is the real shift. Control no longer comes from occupying territory, it comes from shaping choices. Governments are not forced to comply. They are guided into corners where only one option remains economically viable. This is pressure without fingerprints. Even allies are not immune. Because the system does not run on loyalty, it runs on rules. And rules, once embedded, do not care who you are. They care where your money passes through. If your transactions touch the dollar, they touch the system. And touching the system means accepting its gravity. This is why alternatives struggle to gain real traction. not because other currencies lack ambition, but because the infrastructure favors continuity. Replacing the dollar is not about printing money, it is about replacing trust networks, clearing mechanisms, legal frameworks, and decades of habit. The cost of exit is designed to be higher than the cost of obedience. So most countries do not resist, they adapt, they root, they negotiate quietly. Public rhetoric stays loud, but private adjustments tell the real story. Trade patterns shift, reserves are rebalanced slightly, never radically. Everyone talks about change, few can afford it, and this is where modern power becomes self-reinforcing, because the more the system is used as leverage, the more indispensable it becomes. Even critics are forced to operate inside it, if only partially. Participation becomes survival. Neutrality becomes alignment by default. There is no victory parade at the end of this kind of conflict, no signing ceremony, no clear moment when the pressure lifts, because the goal is not conquest, it is behavior, and behavior changes quietly. The dollar did not replace war by eliminating violence, it replaced war by making violence inefficient. Why invade when you can isolate? Why occupy when you can delay? Why destroy when you can slow something until it stops functioning on its own? This is the future. Most people are already living inside without realizing it. A world where power is exercised through access, timing, and permission. Where dominance is measured not in territory, but in dependency. Where the strongest weapon is not force, but structure. And once you see this clearly, something becomes hard to ignore. Wars still make headlines, but they are no longer the main event. The real decisions are happening elsewhere, in systems that never raise their voice, in processes that look boring until they are irreversible, in a framework where money does not just measure value, it decides movement. That is how the dollar became more than currency. It became leverage, and leverage does not need war, it only needs time.